So if you arrived here because you were looking for a way to either clone or upgrade your Western Digital SSD drive, you may be in the right place. This video is going to be specific towards a Western Digital upgrade. So if you are not, if you don't involve Western Digital drive, you're not a WD owner, then this may not be the video for you, but you might get something out of it. There's some interesting information I think that there's going to be, so stick around. So a while back, I bought a new computer to do my video editing on, and the reason why is because I started using Davinci Resolve, migrating from some other softwares, and it turns out that Davinci Resolve is very hungry for a good graphics card. Unlike many other softwares that use the system CPU and system RAM, Davinci likes to do a lot of its heavy lifting right within the GPU, and so trying to use my standard laptop or old computer just was not working out. So I decided it was time to bite the bullet. Well, anyway, I stumbled across a HP Pavilion that was just at a price I could not ignore. For the processor, the model was a 690-0073W, and it had a Core i5 9400F version of the processor. And what I wasn't happy about it is that it only had 8 gig of system RAM and it only had a 256 gigabyte hard drive. But it did have a GTX 1660 Ti graphics card, which is pretty good and performs well. And I thought that would be a good solution for using with Davinci. So anyway, I picked up this computer. I figured for the price that I was saving, it would be easy enough for me to do the upgrades to the pieces that I needed. So I upgraded the RAM to 16 gigabytes, and so that went pretty smoothly. Just found some good RAM, waited for it to go on sale, and saved quite a bit of money by doing that. Now it's time to upgrade the hard drive. I ran across a deal on a Western Digital Black Series 500 gigabyte drive. And I couldn't, it was the right specs. It was M.2, it was the NVMe type of card, so I just couldn't not do that. I mean, that's a great price for that amount of storage and, being able to find it in the right form factor that you need. So anyway, I picked it up, and now the arduous task of trying to clone that thing I embark on now. And I really didn't feel like doing some weird thing. I don't have 2 SSD slots, and I didn't want to buy extra hardware. What's the simplest way I'm going to do that? I didn't want to use Gparted or, anything like that required rebooting and, working at a different interface. I really kind of was watching some tutorials on simple ways to do that right within Windows using particular software. And this is where I get into the caveat that I had learned. So most people that were doing tutorials on it, and the tutorials were great. They were directing you towards Minitool's Partition Manager. However, after downloading it and checking it out and doing all that, I finally came to the conclusion that it wasn't going to work because I thought it looked a little bit different than what the tutorials were showing. And it turns out now that they were all pointing towards Minitool's version 11 and before. Now they're up to version 12, and Minitool no longer offers the cloning piece within the free version of the software. You have to upgrade to the Pro version if you want cloning capabilities in the Minitool Partition Manager. So I wasn't about to spend $60 on the software and burn up all the savings that I had in the hard drive. I was back to trying to find another free way of doing this. And so I had come across Western Digital's website, and it turns out Western Digital actually has a cloning tool that you can use, and they partnered with Acronis. So when I downloaded this thing, it was basically just a limited version of Acronis that basically only had cloning options in it. And so the tool will only run, if you're using the software, it will only run if it detects one of the hard drives being a Western Digital. And so if you're either migrating from or to a Western Digital hard drive, or you're trying to upgrade whatever, you're in good shape if it's Western Digital. But so anyway, I followed the rest of the tutorials that I saw and looked around. I had picked up a external enclosure for my M.2 drive. And this particular one I really liked. I really liked what it was doing. There's only one screw to hold on the cover, so you remove that screw and the cover slides off, and there's only one screw to hold the chip into the board. So installation was very easy. They give you 2 cables with it. You can either go USB-C to USB-C, or there's another one that's Type A to adapt to USB-C. So they give you the cables with it. On my HP Pavilion, it just so happens they put a USB-C slot right on the front of the computer, so you can't get much easier than that. I just plugged it into the computer. Disassembling the machine is a little bit of a task. You can't just remove the side panel and pop in the drive, but I'll get to that in a little bit. To go on with this, so this is it. I put some screens up of this exact drive, how much it cost, and the specs. So this model that I post will be the version for the drive that will fit into this particular computer. So if you're wondering, so anyway, plug it in, run sometimes they call it Acronis. I think it's Acronis, but run the software. One caveat you run into is that, and I don't know if I just missed it in the options. I might have just missed it. But what it will do is it will tack the extra space. If the destination hard drive is larger, it will just tack the extra space onto the last partition in the chain by default. And I don't know if I missed an option. It didn't seem like there was a lot of options in there to miss, but I may have missed it. So what it did is it tacked the extra space onto the Windows RE partition. And if you don't know what that is RE is recovery environment. And it's basically just a small partition that Windows uses to load tools on, or if you need to boot the computer outside of Windows and do certain recovery options on it. So that's why it's called recovery environment, Windows RE. And that's what this partition was. So now all of a sudden, since it tacked the extra space onto that partition, now I got a 256 gigabyte Windows RE partition. Well, that's a little overkill. The RE partition really only needs to be 300 to 500 megabytes. I mean, you don't need much there. Like I said, it's just a staging area Windows uses to load tools on, and it can dynamically flex that if it needs to. So anyway, at this point, I didn't need the other tool. At this point, if you wanted to use the free version of Mini-Tool Partition Manager, those tools will shrink the partition, and I think you can do the rest of it in there. If not, no need to buy the software or anything. Just go into the Windows system utilities. You can shrink that volume within Windows, and then you can add another partition onto it, which is how I did it. I just, like I say, if you have the full version of Mini-Tool or Acronis, then you can resize the partitions any way you want. You can move them around and things like that. But using the free tools, I was kind of limited to just adding a new partition in. And I kind of like it that way anyway. I'd rather have the physical partition there. I used to do that back in the old spinning hard disk days, because they were so notorious for corruption and viruses and things like that. Then I realized that just for security and sharing and things like that, it's always nice to have different partitions, because then you don't have to get so granular down to folder levels if you just want to share a partition out or something to that effect. So I decided to just keep my original OS partition at the 256 gigabyte that the computer originally came with, and start moving all my data that's non-secure onto the new partition. And that's how I decided to handle that. But that was an easy option. Just be aware of that caveat is coming up there. So anyway, like I said, this tutorial, I had to address some of the things that I found out and save some people some time. So anyway, that's how you can upgrade your Western Digital SSD drive. Just hope it was helpful. Like, subscribe, and I'll talk to you later.